And here we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our training today. I'm John Schramm with the Purple Guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I think most of the folks already know a little bit about us, but we do IT support for about 200 organizations here. And excited to be partnered today with Centriq on this Sharepoint training. And I will turn it over to Justin Ruby to give you a little bit more background, and we will get started.
Good morning, and thank you for joining Centriq Training and the Purple Guys today. And John, thanks for the quick intro. We are about to begin Get to the Sharepoint, how to effectively utilize Sharepoint in business processes. As John mentioned, my name is Justin Ruby, and I am the Partner Enablement Manager here at Centriq, and I'll be one of your moderators today. Partner Enablement Manager is really the guy that works with managed service providers such as the Purple Guys and other MSPs that we have partners with across the country. For those of you not familiar with Centriq Training, we are the Midwest premier IT training company. We've been around for over 31 years with locations both in Kansas City and St. Louis. We do serve a nationwide audience and have been known to train internationally as well. And as you can imagine, during the pandemic, our borders have just gotten wider and wider as people become more and more open to virtual training. We are a Microsoft Gold partner, as well as CompTIA, EC Council, Citrix, Red Hat. The list kind of goes on and on. And before introducing our speaker today, I'd like to encourage everyone here to ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. There's a chat bubble there at the top that has a question mark in it. Please utilize that to support those Q&A. We also have added a second moderator today. His name is Craig Gertis. He's also a member of our M365 instructor team. So as you can see there, we have 4 members of that team, and Craig's been on it for, or at Centriq for over 5 years. And he not only teaches Microsoft 365, but also is our professional development content creator, and also delivers classes around, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, crucial conversations. When it comes to professional development, that's your guy. So we're glad to have Craig here join us. And he'll also be answering a lot of the questions that you're asking in the Q&A. So when appropriate, if you don't see your question published out there, he may feel it's best to hold off on that question till the end to allow our speaker to give some input on it. So thank you, Craig, for joining us. We've highlighted some of our most popular M365 classes on this next slide here. So no matter where you are on your journey with Microsoft 365, Centriq should have the right class for you, depending on where you are in that journey. And some of the ways that we can deliver those classes is we can come to you for training. We can deliver any of these classes virtually, and you can attend any of our public classes, and the classes you see there are all offered virtually as well. So if you have any questions on those, please let us know. And if a public or a private class is not right for you, and you're not able to afford to send people out for training or take them out a day for training, we do have Centriq's Microsoft 365 training, e-training portal that we'll talk about a little bit here at the end, and also send you some information on that following the webinar. So without further ado, also here at the end of the webinar, I'll come back on and we'll have like a live Q&A. So please stick around afterwards for the next 10 or 15 minutes. You'll have Nate here live with you, as he'll be live through the entire webinar, and you can ask him anything in regards to the topic today or anything around M365 environment. So I know there's a lot of questions out there and people are learning tons about this product, so Nate would be a good resource for you at that time to ask those questions. Okay, without further ado, I do want to introduce you to Nate. So Nate's pretty freaking awesome. We love him here at Centriq. Our customers love him. He joined the Centriq M365 team back in November as an M365 training specialist. He is a Microsoft certified trainer, and he's been awarded Microsoft's MVP for 2 years running now for his contributions to the tech community. He most recently co-authored MS700 exam guide to help prepare readers for passing or earning the Microsoft 365 Teams Administrator certification. So really glad to have him here, and thank you to Nate for taking the time to deliver this today. I'll turn it over to you at this time, and I'll see you guys here at the end.
All right, thank you, Justin. I'll just get my screen situated here real quick. All right, yeah, thank you so much to everybody who's taken the time to learn a little bit more about SharePoint. The goal, as you can even get from the title here, is that we're not just going to talk about the surface level SharePoint topics. We're trying to think, maybe we get a good understanding of what it can do, but how does it actually translate into business processes? There are a lot of different ways that you could use SharePoint, and we could honestly talk about it for an entire week if we wanted to. So I'm going to do my best to kind of highlight some ways that I started using SharePoint in my own experience to really amp up our business processes internally, both through intranets and through automation. All right, so with SharePoint, our goal is that we're going to collaborate with one another. We're going to work digitally instead of just physically and scanning and faxing and that traditional system of work. And we're going to share with one another. Of course, it's right there in the name. So if we have content or any kind of work that we're doing, the idea is that it's a collaborative effort. It's not just your space. So before we get started, I just want to give this brief 1-minute overview of SharePoint via video, and then we're really going to dive into the business process specific topics.
Teamwork isn't about where you are, it's about being connected. And with SharePoint Online, you'll see how to create, store, and share content on the web, wherever you are. Build intranet sites and create pages, document libraries, and lists to share information across your company. Then add web parts, like text, images, and documents to format and customize your content. Showcase important visuals, news, and updates in a modern layout with communication sites, or connect all the right people for a project with team sites. Discover, follow, and search for sites, files, and people, and manage your day-to-day routine with workflows, forms, and lists and libraries. Sync and store your files in the cloud so anyone can securely work with you. And with the mobile app, catch up with group news on the go. Learn more with video courses at office.com/training and see how to connect, share and manage content, and stay informed with SharePoint Online.
All right. Goosebumps, right? Wasn't that great? So some of those keywords there at the end, connect, share content, stay informed. We're going to talk about all of that. I did pick some specific topics, which we'll get to here in a minute, but just keep in mind that while you just saw a very brief high-level overview within a minute, we are going to focus on some specific functions. So with SharePoint, how I kind of think about it when we're talking about intranets is that we've transitioned over time from this system of record where, our intranets used to be a place where we would just go and consume information, download something, print it off, maybe, submit it to HR. But we didn't really go to the intranet to do work, to track and share data, to collect data even. Digital forms, came later, of course, as well. But now we're at this really robust stage in intranets and thinking about digital workplaces, and especially with COVID and so many of us being remote, that we need systems of engagement. It's not enough to just have this place of consumption and uploading and downloading. So we're going to talk about what that really means here. And we're going to kind of separate SharePoint into a few topics. When I think about, what's central to SharePoint, what really builds it out, it's the sites with pages and news and kind of that social website-like experience. And then we've got lists and libraries. So lists and libraries are just kind of like the core building blocks, where lists, we're tracking data, sharing data, collecting it. Libraries is more like your traditional file storage or file sharing experience, where you've got that shared network drive kind of like experience with your team. And then with all of this, we're infusing modern collaboration. We have co-authoring and version history, and then we're managing permissions at a could be item level, permission level, or maybe it's just group based. So there's really no one way that you could ever use SharePoint. And in fact, every organization I've ever worked with uses it slightly differently because they can maximize in different areas and really get what they want out of it. So today specifically in this webinar, what we're going to focus on are that social experience, so the sites piece, that first core feature, specifically just generally talking about how we can use it for intranets, what web parts are on those pages, and then we're going to talk about some of the intelligent roll-ups, the digest, the collection of data across sites, which really kind of helps us save time and target material to specific audiences. Okay, then we've got those other two building blocks, the lists and libraries piece. And inside of these, it's not just simply a repository. We're not just dropping content. We are using intelligent features like calculated columns. We're customizing our forms to create amazing user experiences. We're customizing views to create our own report-like experiences, and also to share data in different ways without duplicating storage space. And then finally, in that category, custom column and list formatting, because we all want to view things a little bit differently, right? And we have that ability to highlight the important content in a list without losing all of the maybe less important but still contextual knowledge there. We'll touch briefly on content types and templates, which just allow us to have quicker access to templatized or regular types of content. And then we're going to end just briefly touching on integration with other M365 apps, because SharePoint is amazing. It's my favorite in the whole suite. It's where I started my career, and I still obviously talk about it all the time. But when it integrates with these other apps, that's where we really start to see this powerhouse that is M365. We see how we can bring in automation, how we can infuse data visualization and reporting, and how we can use other apps and services like Forms and like Planner to really boost our team's productivity and capabilities in the digital workplace. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start with that sites piece. So SharePoint, core building blocks, sites. Here we are. So we're just looking at a screenshot, but I'm going to go back and forth between slides and an actual SharePoint experience, so you can see not just what the concept is, but how it interacts with a user. But what we're looking at here is just a screenshot of a could-be intranet that features obviously large graphics that are visually appealing to the eye. We're pulling in live weather, live times for our different office locations. We've got our quick links for those important resources. And then we've got on-demand videos that are maybe training, maybe town hall recordings, could be literally anything. So let's hop out and take a look ourselves. Okay, so this is a different kind of site. The landing site that we just looked at, that was kind of a landing page intranet. This is another example. And if you remember that brief intro video, there were two site templates we could choose from. Communication, which would be more like your broader communications, of course, your marketing, your central root intranet. And then you have team sites. And this would be an example of a team site where we have access to a lot of the same tools. In fact, most of the same web parts are available in both templates. And we create these pages and these experiences, but at a smaller scale. We're not thinking across the whole organization necessarily. This would be more for me and my direct coworkers, those that I'm working on specific projects with every single day. And some of the trademarks of a team site would be that we have our own shared document space. Yes, you can have it at the organization level, but how often is it that you're really sharing content with 1,000 other people? So in this case, maybe we're just a team of 19. And we can see up here, I do have 19 members in this site. So we're thinking small scale here. And we share these documents. We have this countdown to a deadline or a product launch or a project kickstart or something. We can put milestones. We can put our shared calendar from Outlook right here on the page, so we don't have to go to two places to get that info. We've got site activity. We've embedded Power BI, so we can see stats and data that's relevant to our work that we use to make decisions every day. And we can put news, and this news actually is coming from all over the intranet. This may be our primary workspace as a team, but we're pulling in stuff from, you can see here, the landing, which is the top level intranet site. We've got another intranet site, and this is the Marquet project team. So it doesn't have to even be from our site to pull in relevant content and target it to my group. And along the left, you can see I can build my custom navigation where we can have access to all the resources we need throughout any given day. So at a very high level, this is kind of how SharePoint could be used both for broad communications as an intranet and for micro communications within your team. Now inside of here, I'm just going to move right into pages. So as a site owner, I can click new and click on page, and it's going to give me some template options. Now these could be my personal templates that maybe I've created, but out of the box, when you first get started, you're presented with blank, visual, and basic text. And we'll go ahead and pick one of those just for today. All right, so here we are. I'm going to create a Purple Guys page, and you can see it comes preloaded with a certain layout, right? I've got 2 columns, another 2 columns here, and that's the end. It's basically a 4 box square. Now each section here can have a different layout. I can do 2 columns, 3 columns. It doesn't matter how I arrange my page really. I can add additional layouts, edit existing if I want. Maybe I want to make that 3 columns there. But you can see it's absolutely fluid. It's very point and click. If I want to change something, I click it and then I get a little menu. If I want to add something, I click the plus sign. So it's very user friendly and kind of a departure from that classic experience in SharePoint we're used to. For those of you that were using Server anyway. So web parts are the next piece we're going to talk about. And web parts are simply little boxes of content or little portals to other information that we're putting on any page. Now, we're not duplicating content here. For example, if I were to add a news web part, I'm not doubling news that's out there. I'm just simply funneling it into my page. So we're not duplicating there. If I were to add a document library, same thing, I'm not duplicating documents. I'm simply choosing a document library that already exists, and I'm saying show that content on this page because it's relevant. So let me just give you an example here. If we were to add a button, something very simple, it's a very simple button. We say click here, and we put a link, right? So some things are very simple. And this page could be registration for an event. It could be benefits enrollment. I see a lot of pages, about HR resources and FAQ type stuff. Buttons are useful for those, of course, for anything. You've got dynamic hero web parts, which are a little more involved, where you select static content to fill each of these boxes, choose a different layout, and then you've got that really nice visual representation of information. But not all of this has to be just inside of SharePoint. And you'll see later as we talk more about integration, we can actually pull in pieces from third-party solutions if your license allows it, like Twitter. If you have a Twitter feed you want to pull in, you can put in Planner, which is an M365 service, but it doesn't live within SharePoint, but it can be surfaced in SharePoint. You can see Outlook items like the group calendar. We've got people and organization chart pulling from Azure AD, Microsoft Forms, which we'll talk about at the end, Power BI, Maps, Weather, World Clock. All of this stuff is just live and dynamic and rich and allows you to really get custom with your pages. So those are web parts. Now let's hop back into our slides here. Okay, and the next thing we're going to talk about is news and intelligent rollup. So remember, I kind of brushed on to audience targeting and making sure we're funneling news to the right people. And you saw the news web part actually already on that team site. So actually, if I were to go to my home page again, here's my news web part. And you can see we've got news coming from 4 different sites here. Now, if I click See All as a site owner, there we go. Okay, I can see a whole bunch more news going all the way back to who knows when. But what I really like here is that as the site owner, I can be like, okay, there's some really great news that I'm pulling in from all over our organization. So you can find a different, here's one, Contoso Works is another site. Lots of Contoso Works, retail operations. So you can just see that we're pulling from multiple sources. But what I really like is as a team owner or a manager or a leader of this site, at least, I can create a news digest where I go through and handpick the pieces that I think my team's really going to care about that maybe they didn't see because there's a lot of news in our organization. And when I'm ready, I just click next, and it's going to help me create a dynamic and beautiful news digest that's going to go out to these people. So I'm going to say weekly digest. I'm going to put in the name of my group so I don't have to put in individual names. But like, here's some important news you may have missed. Okay, and then it's going to put in all of those pieces. I can rearrange them at this point if I want to promote one over the other. And when I'm ready, I send that news digest. Now, when the users get that, it just comes into their group mailbox. If you send it to a group, of course, it goes to their personal mailbox in Outlook. If you send it to an individual, so we'll just give this a second to pop in here. There it goes. So you can see it's pretty quick, but look how nice that looks. I'm not a graphic designer, I'm not in marketing, not in communications, but I just clicked a few checkboxes, wrote a little one-liner here, and boom, I've got this really nice look for hand-selected news that I pulled from all over my organization. Okay, so that's kind of the digest view. Now the other piece for news would be the roll-up piece. Whoops, so let me go back here. So rather than having to hand pick and send that out via email, what about that digital workplace? Can't we just go out there and look at it? Absolutely. So for this news web part, let me just show you kind of the back end. And this happens, by the way, for news, documents, you can do it for events, where you're rolling up from different sites to create a single place. Now, if I edit my news web part, notice I can choose just from my site. I just want to see Market Project Team news. I want to choose specific sites, and I'm literally going to check those here. Or I can do recommended for the current user. So this is going to target any site that the user may have a connection to. Is permissions trimmed, so you do have to have access to the site to be able to see the news surfaced in a part like this, but it's all built on AI. It's watching activity, behaviors, interests, access, of course, with permissions, and then it surfaces news that's relevant. So what I see here is going to be very different from what you see. Right, and then we can change the layout, of course, just like with many web parts in SharePoint. You can see some are more graphic heavy, some allow for showing a lot more than others, as you can see here, but pretty cool, right? And something I really like is you can actually schedule news. So if you want to write it today but publish it Monday when maybe it's going to get better exposure, you can absolutely do that. So let me leave this page. Okay, we're going to create new news. That's fun to say. I'm making it think too hard today. I'll just give it a second here. There we go. And once again, I can choose from templates just like a page, right? When I was creating that page to show you web parts, my templates are the same because news and pages are identical in the background. It's just the behavior and how they're different. So I'm going to choose visual. I'm going to create that post. Since you've already seen the basic text template. There we go. And we'll just do a demo news page. All right, so for my page details, this is where I can schedule it. And it's still catching up to me here. Bear with me. Maybe. Nope. Maybe I didn't. Oh, there it goes. Just took a second. All right, so yeah, if you do your page details, then you'll see a scheduling spot, and you can turn that on. And then you just say, I want to publish this Monday, because today's not the best day, but let's say Monday at noon, we'll go ahead and publish this. And then when I'm finished, I just hit schedule. And now nobody's going to see it, of course, until that publish date, and it's going to be like it was published just then. So you can do that with pages, you can do it with news, but that way, you're delivering stuff at the right time. You don't have to do everything last minute, and you can kind of just keep track on dates and deadlines a little bit better with all of that. So I really appreciate that feature myself. All right, so let's talk next about those core building blocks of SharePoint. So we talked about sites and pages, of course, those are very important. But lists and libraries are those next pieces. And if you're new to M365, you may just already know that there's lists in SharePoint, and those have been separate for a while now. But if you've been using SharePoint for years, you may remember that lists is actually a departure from SharePoint, where it started as a built-in product where we just built normal custom lists inside of SharePoint. And over time, it evolved to be its own standalone product that still does all the stuff that SharePoint lists used to do. And in fact, all of your former SharePoint lists are just using the list framework in the background. So nothing had to change there. We didn't lose anything, no URLs broke. But now we have this standalone app where we don't have to have an entire site just to have a single list. And now you can have personal lists that you use in your OneDrive instead of always having to have a shared list that you put on a SharePoint site. So really cool features came with this list departure, or this list addition, I guess you could say, where we're now able to share, track, and plan as a team or by ourselves. So when we create these new lists, you see 8 templates here. There are actually 11, and soon we'll see all 11 of those. They're working on that. But if you create a new list in Teams, for example, this integration of lists inside of Teams, you'll see all 11. So if you've seen them and you're wondering where they are, that's probably what you did. But in SharePoint, right now anyway, when we add a new list, these are the 8 templates we see. And we don't have to use a template necessarily because we can always start from blank, which is what a custom list app used to be in SharePoint, just a blank list. Now you can import from Excel, which is the only option you see represented here where we can import existing data. Everything else is going to be a blank list. It's going to have maybe columns pre-filled for you, data types, conditional formatting, maybe some form customizations. Those will all be there, but Excel, or from Excel, is the only way to import rows of existing data. And I've tested it, tried to break its limits and everything, and I recently did a list with 50,000 items, so it's pretty powerful. It has no problem with that. Okay, and then from existing list kind of templatizes something you already have. So let's say you start with a template, you customize it to make it work for what you need, and then you're doing something on a cyclical basis. Maybe every quarter you have to do something similar. So instead of creating another template using employee onboarding and then tweaking it again, we can just use from existing list to templatize something we already used. All right, so whenever we do choose a template, it's going to show us what we can see, and I'd rather show you this in a demo environment, so let's hop out there. All right, so I'm going to go back to my home page, so I get my normal new menu. Okay, and we're going to do a new list. And here are those two options we're talking about right now, list and library. And they're very similar. The main difference is that list is for sharing and tracking mostly metadata or just values, kind of like a worksheet or a database would be. Whereas document library is meant for storing content, for more of that shared network drive experience, but we still get all the power and value of a list. We can still do intelligent workflows. We can still do calculated columns. We get all of that. The primary distinction would be what is the main purpose? Like if we're always going to have a document on every single row, it's probably supposed to be a document library. But if it's a list, let's say like a reimbursement request list, and we'll only sometimes have documents like attached receipts and stuff, then we'll use a list and we'll just occasionally attach documents when it makes sense. All right, so there is no 100% correct answer all the time. Of course, it's going to depend on your unique needs, but just being aware of some of the differences as you get more familiar with them will help you make that decision on the fly. But we're going to start out with lists so we can see those templates. All right, so we can see what we just saw on the slide. Now, when we choose one of these, let's say Recruitment Tracker, it's going to show us all of our columns that we're going to get with this template. So I can see candidate name, position, progress, and I can scroll over and see that some of these have conditional formatting. Some of them are pulling from Azure AD, where I can see the interviewers here, and I would see their pictures as well if I chose to. And we can put links, we can put documents and such. So let's go ahead and use this template. All right, so here's our list. You can see that was painless. I didn't even break a sweat, but now I've got this really cool list here. Got all of my columns already pre-configured. And whenever I click new, this is one of the coolest things I think when I was first learning SharePoint, is that we have this form experience. Now, a lot of users don't really care for the side panel. We don't have to use that side panel if we want to have users do a form. And I'll just show you real quick kind of the alternative. It's just a little URL trick where we could send somebody to a link that takes them just to the form itself. So here's just that. So they don't have to see the whole list, and there's permissions trimming. So if you make it so that people can only see their own submissions, that's of course all they'll see. So we'll kind of get into that. But just keep in mind that even though I'm showing you in a side panel, that's not the only experience. There is a full screen option here. So I'm going to cancel there. We'll do new again. Or we'll try. There we go. And we're just going to put some test values in here. You can see if it's a multi-choice, I got a drop down. If it's an Azure AD field, then I can search for somebody. Oops. So we can find somebody in this directory. Here, I'll just put the user that I am right now. So you put values from Azure Active Directory. You can see it searched as I did that. Put some dates in here. Dates and times on some. And I'm not going to do all of these. We'll go down. You can do multi-line text, you can do links, and at the bottom here, that attachment option, where remember I started with a list. This isn't a document library, and I can only get through that attachment. If I were to attach a CV here, I'd only be able to get to it through opening the item or clicking it from the list. So it's not the primary content. If I want documents like resumes to be the primary content, let's say I have a resume library, then of course this is more likely going to be a document library. But right now we're in a list. I'm going to click save. There we go. And immediately adds it to the list. I can see my conditional formatting with a nice little icon, some colors here, like if it's on hold or complete. It pulled from Azure Active Directory and gave me my profile photo there. So it's just very database-like, but what makes it unique is that form experience as well, where users are directly submitting here, and we're taking out that kind of middleman of that data entry specialist, right? Now, once we submit something, of course, we can edit it later. You can see we can even have comments about it. So as you and I are working together on a team, let's say we are the recruiters or we're the hiring professionals, we open up an item, we can have a whole conversation next to it without affecting the original content. And we can make changes over time. Like let's say, as I'm working through this candidate, I could say, okay, so our phone screener is going to be, I clearly don't know anybody else's name here. So we'll just use Megan again. So I've got that. And when I made a change and click off of it, it saves automatically every single time. So I don't have to click save. I'm just going to close out. And what's really cool, I think, about lists is that they have individual version history. So every single change I make is tracked and auditable, right? So we'll go into that. There we go. So I can see the original version and the data that was entered for that one. And then on all later versions, I just see the specific values that were changed. So I only changed phone screener. I can see I did it. And I can always go back and restore or compare a previous version. So pretty nice, right? And that's built into SharePoint lists and libraries. Right, so some other options for individual list items, we can get alerts on these. So if I want to be alerted whenever there's a new item added to this list, it's a simple form that I fill out to say alert me every day. You can be alerted when things are deleted in case you're concerned about that. And we can share individual items. And that's kind of one of the biggest distinctions between an Excel worksheet and a SharePoint list is we can have item level permissions. So I could share just this row with you. Now, let's talk about permissions just a little bit. If I were to go into my list settings, again, one of the biggest values of a SharePoint list versus Excel workbooks here, and I go to, let's do advanced settings. So we have this item level permission section, and I love this because it's user friendly. It's a lot easier than doing a custom workflow or something. But we can set this list so that you can actually only see items that you created. Now, me as the list owner who has full control and can delete the whole library or the whole list, of course, will continue to see all of them. But if you're just a contributor to this list, then all you're going to see are your own items. So I'm making sure you're not seeing sensitive content created or managed by other people. And that's in the read section now. It's similar in create and edit, where I can say you can create and edit all, or just edit those that you created. So that's probably what I would do. I'd say read what you created, edit what you created, or if you're only submitting and we don't expect you to make any additional changes, I'd change that to none. So just some simple options there to make a really robust system that's private and it keeps security trimmed based on your identity. And there is no workflow involved there. Now, all of these settings apply to document libraries as well. Exact same thing. You still get versioning, you still get item level permissions. Again, it just comes down to the primary content type. So we actually won't go into libraries. Just keep in mind everything you just learned applies to that as well. All right. So we'll go back here. And actually, I'm going to switch over to a list with more exciting data. So I've got this sales list here. This is a list with 50,000 rows. So it's quite a bit of data. And something I really like is that it's become a lot easier in recent years to format modern lists. So in fact, if you just drop down your view menu on any list, choose format current view, it kind of walks you through it in a wizard here. So I can say I want to apply formatting to what? An entire row or a column. So let's say I wanted to do conditional formatting on the order date field. Okay, then based on the data type, like order date, of course, is a date, pretty self-explanatory, right? But I can do formatting based on the date values. So I could say green might be coming up soon, yellow might be overdue, red might be super overdue. And you can configure that using edit styles. Or I could do conditional formatting where I get really granular with it. Okay, and that applies to any column. So that one was a date, but we could say let's do sales. Okay, and we could do conditional formatting based on that. And once again, add specific values or rules based on that. So we shade it or highlight it in a certain way. Now the other option is row. So all of these are columns except for the first one. It's just by row, and you could just do a simple alternated in row. And I remember when I was first getting started with SharePoint, one of my most popular blog posts was, how do I add alternating shading? And it used to be I had to do this whole JavaScript thing, and you had to apply it to the page and kind of work with different web parts. But now in the modern experience, you simply go up to your view, format the current view, and choose. How do you want to do it? Alternating just by default. You can edit the styles and the colors, or do conditional, and you choose specifically what's going to shade what by row. So pretty cool that's built in. Now I will just mention one thing in documents. We're going to skip ahead a little bit here to content types. Now, another thing, if you did use SharePoint before, and now you're kind of in the modern experience or being introduced to M365, is templatizing, like any kind of Word doc template that you currently have. It used to be we had to create formal content types and attach that existing template to a content type, and that's still the best practice, absolutely. But there is a simpler, more user-friendly approach these days where you're not creating a new content type, and it's certainly not a terrible practice, but now we have this add template option right on the new menu. So with this, I would just choose add template, I would upload a file, And we won't actually go through all the steps, but I could choose like a Word doc or something. You can see all my headshots. But you can upload any kind of Word doc template, any Excel, any PowerPoint, whatever template you have that you're using repeatedly, add it right to your new menu. So the next time you click new, you see sales request or reimbursement request or anything that you're currently templatizing. It's going to show up right here. And you can edit the new menu. If you don't want people adding OneNote notebooks to your library, simply edit the menu, uncheck OneNote notebook. So that's become a lot easier in recent years. But the other option is content types. And we won't get too far into that, but basically that allows you to have a single list. Like if I go back to my sales list, oh, maybe. Any second. Okay, let me try another. Here, we'll just do the single list. It's that 50,000 items. I'm making it work too hard. So whenever you click new, basically you can choose for some forms to have certain options available. It's basically a conditional display of fields. So for one content type, it may be new candidate. Let's just say on this recruitment tracker, we have a new candidate content type. And so for that, we ask for, let's say, a specific 10 fields. But if we have a former candidate content type, maybe we don't need as much info or we need more info. So the whole idea with content types that we'd configure probably at a global level, we could do it at the site level as well, or even just at the list level. But with content types, we're basically saying we don't want to have 6 different lists. We don't want to have a list for new candidates, for former candidates, for future candidates or prospects. You know, we want to have one list with variations, just small variations, where we're not creating similar columns again and again and again. So content types allow us to do just that, where we're going to say we're going to have about 3 different options maybe in our library, and we're going to show some fields, hide others based on that first selection of that content type. If I choose to create a new candidate, I'm going to have certain options. If I choose to create an existing candidate, maybe I'll have different ones. So along those lines as well, with this form, you can see it's a single column, right? It's not too exciting, but we can customize forms as well using something called Powerapps, which is part of the Power Platform. And I'm not sure it's going to load for me too quickly. We'll see. But basically, if you just choose configure or customize with Powerapps, it's going to give you the option to get completely granular in the display and the design, and even some conditional options here as well. This would be the route to go if any of you used InfoPath previously, or did any kind of special customization using JavaScript, maybe with SharePoint Designer. This would be your new go-to. So I've done this quite a bit, and it does take some getting used to. It's no InfoPath. And I say thankfully, so I do appreciate the Powerapps experience, but we're not going to wait for it. It's going to take a little bit in this demo environment. But basically, it's just a form builder, and it is very visual. It's very UI friendly, but it does take a little bit of training. So I'll touch right at the end about some opportunities for you that are available for free for you to go and learn more about Powerapps and how to get started with that if you're interested in form customization. So let's hop back into our slides here and catch up a little bit. All right, so one thing that we haven't touched on yet is column types, where you've seen lists, you've seen libraries. Now, something that really got me some traction when I first started working in SharePoint was learning how to use calculated columns. And don't be fooled, I don't have any of these memorized except for maybe 6 that I use all the time. But there's 122 possible functions. Isn't that wild? So some that I use a lot, I use text. I do the basic math operations and stuff that some don't even have a function for. But you can absolutely get more familiar with these and use them as you need. But hopefully, at a first glance, some of you have used Excel. These should look really similar. A lot of these are exactly the same that you would use in Excel, right? Rounding and stuff. So we won't go through all of those, but I do want to give you some examples that you could use. And before we do, let me just hop in and show you how to create a calculated column, and then I'm just going to give you examples from there. All right, so you can create columns multiple ways. I can either do it right from my list. As you can see here, I can add a column, or you can do it from list settings where we went to go to advanced settings earlier. So I'm going to start from here. I choose add column, and you'll see calculated isn't one of the first options. So you have to click on more. Okay, and then here we're going to see calculated near the bottom of our list of types. And then basically all you have to do is learn how to use those formulas. And you put the formula right in this box here. So it looks a little strange because this is actually using classic SharePoint. So those of you who've used Server before probably recognize the look and feel. And for your resulting value that comes from your formula, you choose the type that it's going to display there. So let me find that other list for sales, and we'll actually do one. I'm going to close some of my other tabs here. Okay, I'm going to exit that grid view. Okay, and while that thinks, we'll just go ahead and get started. I'll show you how to create it here in a second after it finishes loading. But we can do conditional formulas. So here's just a few examples where at the top, you're going to see a row of data. And at the bottom, here's some answers that we can get by using calculated columns. So the first one, are the dates valid? Meaning this is like a reimbursement request where somebody traveled, they have a start date, they have a return date. And so just to check if the dates are valid, we're asking, is the return date less than the start date? Meaning, were they reversed probably? So we say not, and then we put it in parentheses, return date less than start date, and it's going to tell us yes or no. So we can easily filter our list to see who might have made an error when they submitted their request. Okay, and then is this row complete? And this gets a little complicated where we're saying, are any of these fields blank? That's all that says, and it's yes or no. And then the last one here, what level of approval is needed? Where we can say, based on the amount that they're requesting, we can classify it as a tier 1, a tier 2, or a tier 3 request, and then again have different views, which we'll talk about here in a second, where we can filter that and provide actual reports for people who would care about tier 1, 2, or 3. Okay, another example would be dates. So instead of doing conditional, we're saying no, we can still do like if certain date differences between the return date and the submitted date is more than 30 days, it's too late, otherwise it's eligible. We can extract values from dates. Like if we just want the year from a value, instead of showing the whole date, we can just have a 2020 or a 2021 column. Are there any calculations that had errors? Like, for example, if you did want to do start date or return date minus start date and they reversed it, that would give you an error. So you can just have a column that says, did all the calculations that I've already created have issues? And we're not going to go through all these. You'll have access to the slides and the recording if you want to come back and kind of play with some of these specific formulas. But here's just one more for text. So instead of working with dates or conditional, we can also just extract text values and manipulate text values, which is the example I'd like to show you with my sales list. So for the demo, for the calculated column, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my massive list of 50,000 items, and I want to create a better view where I can group it by month. Because right now my list just has specific dates, and all I can do is sort it. I can sort it by ascending or descending, but that doesn't give me this nice reportable rolled up view. But with the calculated column, we can get that. So here I am. I'm going to exit my grid view on that list. There we go. And we're going to create our calculated column. We'll do more. Okay, we do calculated. We'll call this one order month. Oops. Okay, and for our formula, you don't have to memorize this, but basically all we do is to say I want to take text from a value, and in this case it's going to be order date, and then I put a comment in how I want it to be displayed. So because I want to be able to sort it well, I'm going to do year first, year, month, and then I want to spell out the month so I don't have to remember, oh, 6 is June. I mean, it's not that hard, but it's just easier on my eyes. So in parentheses, I'm going to put the actual month name as well. And you just get familiar with these over time that a 4-digit Y is going to be the 4-digit year numerically. 2-digit month is the number of the month, and then the 4-digit M is going to be the actual name of the month. So we've got text, we're pulling it out of the date, we're going to format it like that. We're going to leave the type as text and click OK. Oops, oh, and I've got over 50,000 items. All right, well, in the interest of time, yeah, there are list view thresholds, so I need to limit my views. But this is what happens, basically. We'd get that 2020-02 in the name of the month in parentheses, and it gives you a value right here to show me I had 31 submissions for February. I had 44 for January. And this is a classic view, but the same works for modern. So you get that same kind of experience. All right, so there are a whole bunch, and of course we're not touching on all of this today, but just keep in mind that as you start using lists and libraries more, all of these are available to you, where you can do all kinds of things, and each one of these is a business process example of how SharePoint could be used in your organization. So again, you'll have access to all of those later. And then I tried to do a view, but my list is too large, I apologize. All right, we went through customization with Powerapps, kind of skipping around here. Whoops. I hyperlinked my slide. Okay, we did formatting. Okay, we did templates. So the last piece we're going to talk about today, just real quickly, is the integration with other apps. Now we've talked about the core building blocks. We've got the sites, the pages, the lists, and the libraries. Now where we integrate is where we really get that wow factor. So I'm going to go back to my home page here. Okay, I'm going to edit my page. And you've seen web parts already, so you're not going to see anything too new here. What we're focusing on is bringing in additional experiences. There we go. All right, so first I'm just going to show you forms, and then I'll show you planner, and we'll see what we have time for, but we're going to be wrapping up here shortly. All right, so for my web part list, I can actually search it. I'm going to find forms a lot quicker that way. Okay, and we can actually create new forms here without going to forms first or add an existing. So in the interest of time, I'm going to see if I can just add one that's existing. There we go. So I'm just grabbing a URL real quick for this one. Don't have to remember any of this. Okay, we're just going to paste that in there, and you'll see for forms, when we're creating these surveys and quizzes in our organization, we can choose to either collect responses on our SharePoint page or just show the results. So let's say I want to collect information from my team. I choose collect, and then it actually embeds the form right here. And I can drag it to a different part of the page to get maybe a tighter look, rather than making it, take up most of the page. Like if I want to put it right above that countdown, then it fits in there. It resizes, it's dynamic, it's very rich. And people can take the form right on my page, click submit without ever leaving SharePoint. Now keep that concept in mind where we're creating that single context to work from. And I can do that with Planner and Power BI as well. Okay, so I choose Planner this time. This one's a little easier to use. It doesn't require you to go get your URL. All right, so I can select an existing plan. So you can see if I choose event plan, it's going to pull in my planner boards. Eventually. Or go ahead and see if it'll work if I do this. Sometimes it's just a little laggy when I make it do so much in a short amount of time. Okay, I'm not sure why it's taking so long, but basically, maybe because it's not signed in here. I'll just kind of show you Planner real quick. But that event plan I was trying to add would basically embed exactly like you're about to see it, where on our actual SharePoint page, rather than having to go out to Planner like I just did, I can embed the actual plan itself, where we have all of our tasks. We can drag and drop these, complete them together without leaving SharePoint. All right, let me just see if that loaded. Yes and no. Okay, so interest of time, we'll just keep on moving on. The next thing then is Power Automate, and I'm not going to get much into it, but I do just want you to kind of feel encouraged to go out and explore it because it can connect to SharePoint and again, bring information into SharePoint, take information out of SharePoint. to create that single place where you go to work and give you the data you need where you need it. So I'll just give you some examples here. There we go. So with using SharePoint as a trigger, we could say when a file is classified a certain way, when a file is deleted, when it's created, when an item or a file is created, when something happens in a specific folder, all kinds of triggers there. And then you can see some examples of pre-built templates where you don't have to know even how to build a workflow, really. It's very point and click, very user-friendly, where we can get emails or push notifications or Teams channel posts. We can connect RSS to SharePoint and post blog posts to our SharePoint list. I've seen people connect Twitter to their SharePoint list where they're collecting a certain hashtag. It's pretty endless because this connects to third-party services. It connects, internally to M365 and brings everything together into one place. So if anybody's ever used Nintex or let's see, SharePoint Designer workflows, that's where I started. This would be the new norm. All right. So let's hop back into slides. I think we're all done there. So I will hand it back over to Justin at this point. Our contact information is up on the screen if you want to communicate with any of us after the fact. But I do just want to thank everybody and remind you to stick around for the Q&A. We will have an opportunity here to address any questions that were unanswered. And while Justin's talking, feel free to continue to use that Q&A to submit any questions that you still have or anything you want to learn more about. All right.
All right. Thank you, Nate. And yes, again, let's utilize Nate while we have this time with him. It looks like we have about 10 to 12 minutes to ask any questions you have, not only in SharePoint, but anything in Microsoft 365. So one of the ways that Centriq can partner with you is through our M365 Adoption and Engagement subscription program. And that program entails a monthly subscription to our e-training portal, the one I mentioned a little bit about at the beginning of this event. So the portal consists of over 4,000 titles within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. These titles will take a deep dive into like Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, Power Automate, Outlook, Delve, and all the other applications you get with your subscription or your M365 subscription. It also provides gamification that gives a transparent view throughout the organization that all, where as users earn badges or awards, it becomes transparent to the rest of the organization. It also has greater accountability by allowing the administrator of the product to assign customized learning paths that are assigned to you based upon your job role. So by being a subscriber, you also have access to the public or private classes that we have at a very discounted rate. Centriq has made this incredibly affordable, where small and mid-sized companies do not have to pay enterprise pricing. So companies with like less than 50 employees will pay as much as $250 a month for the entire organization. Or if you have like up to 100 employees, it would be closer to $300 a month. So it is very, very affordable for your entire company. So I'm including right now, I'll post it here, but I'm including my bookings calendar. So if you'd like to set up an appointment with me, you can just click on this link that I'm putting out there, and it'll give you my schedule, and you're welcome to go ahead and set up a time with me, and I can go into further details about it. Also, Purple Guys is going to send out a follow-up email that will include like a video demo of what that e-training portal looks like. So I encourage you to watch that and see if that's a good fit for you guys. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Craig and to Nate to help answer any questions you have. I haven't seen any pop through, so please go ahead and ask whatever's on your mind, and these guys will help answer those for you. Craig, Nate, back to you.
All right, thanks, Justin. There we go. All right, yeah, so if anybody has any last questions, feel free to stick around, ask those now in the Q&A. Craig and I are both watching that to see if anything comes through. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, I do want to thank you for taking the time to learn more about SharePoint and how it could be used with your business processes. I know it was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but that's kind of like the showcase experience, right? So you've seen a lot of examples, hopefully, that you could see maybe translating to your own business processes or being useful to you and your colleagues. But anyway, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. I'll stick around for those who have questions. All right, so I see one that just came through. With all the features like sites, can it be accessed externally? So some resources could, like you could have external guests that are part of a team, so they would have access to some SharePoint features, including the site. So it just depends on your organization's specific settings, where your global admin is going to have to decide what kind of access is granted to SharePoint, which supports teams in the background. And then, of course, your team's administrator is going to have to allow guests, and your specific team will have to have those settings. Like there's a whole bunch that have to be aligned for everything to work well. But it's easy to do by default. It's just if you did lock down stuff, you might have to have a conversation with an admin about how to get that access in. Now, as far as externally facing sites in SharePoint, that's not really a thing that's provided anymore. You could explore solutions with Powerapps, where you're going to have a portal page that is externally facing, and they could see surfaced data, where you could bring up list information. I assume document libraries as well, and it feels like kind of their own custom experience, but they're not actually allowed into SharePoint via just a web URL. You can't like make a public website with SharePoint is what I'm trying to say. So, great question. All right, I think I'm going to call it. So if anybody does have any lingering questions, again, my contact information is on the screen. Thanks again to those of you who hung around here for the Q&A, and we'll see you again next time. Oops, sorry. So I did just see another question. The event planning that we demonstrated, is that considered a form of project management? Yes, it can be. It's kind of a light project manager. The difference would be like you're not handling a budget and you can't really manage resources like you could with Microsoft Project, which is a more robust option. So let me jump into Planner here real quick. I'll show you kind of the extent of what you can do, but let me just open up my event plan here. And it doesn't have to be just events, of course, you could use this for literally anything, but any one task inside of Planner is limited to, you have buckets, progress, priorities, start and end dates, but you see there's no budget, there's no way to say, how available is Grady. You can't do waterfalls or any kind of diagrams really that would be helpful for heavy project management, but you do get, light project management capabilities where it's more like just task tracking. And you do get some charts, but it's not near as helpful as Microsoft Project would be with some of this, where you're just getting high level, how many tasks are left, what are their statuses, which buckets are they in, what's the priority, and who are they assigned to. So another great question, and that's a good conversation to have. Like how deep do we need to get into project management, project versus planner, because there is an additional cost involved if you do choose project, but with it you get a ton of new capabilities that let you get a lot deeper into traditional project management. Whereas this is included with M365, Planner is included, and it's pretty robust. It's good for most people, but not for those true project managers. Okay, do we offer MS Project training? We can. Yep, we can absolutely hook you up with that. Just make sure you contact one of us. Justin, who would be best for that?
You can actually just click on that appointment I put into the Q&A down there and set some time up with me. I'd be happy to talk with her or him. Cool. But the short answer is yes.
All right, so with that, we are at time. Once again, thank you everybody for sticking around. Enjoy the rest of your day.